I would like to call to order the July 22nd, 2020 School Committee meeting at 7:06 p.m. First matter of business is to turn the floor over and the gavel to Mr. Malone, our superintendent, for our reorganizational meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The July 22nd reorganizational school committee meeting will be televised and recorded meeting location. Due to the recent open meeting law policy set forth by the governor during the current state of emergency, the meeting is being held in virtual meeting. To participate, call in at 978-771-0819 and view live through television cable channels Comcast channel 22 and Verizon channel 34 or YouTube.
Are you there, Chris?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay. Out. Try to log in.
Shannon, can you hear the superintendent?
I can.
I don't know why I can't hear him.
I couldn't, Keith, I couldn't hear him either.
We just lost him.
Yeah, I couldn't hear him. He was in and out.
He's bugging in and out.
He's logging back. He's going to try to log back in.
Okay.
Brian?
Yes.
I don't know if Chris is reaching out to you or trying to come back on. Do you see him trying to log back in?
It looks like he's in now. I think we should be good.
Okay.
No.
Oh, you're back, Chris. You're back.
I'm still getting a spick. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, everyone's frozen on my screen, so.
Oh.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Just the committee at this time, I'd like to seek nominations for the primary election of officers for the position of chairperson for the school committee for the 2020-2021 school year.
I'll nominate Keith Sullivan for chair.
I second that.
I have a nomination, Mr. Sullivan, and a second. Are there any others? My screen is frozen, so I'm hoping you can hear me. With that, we'll take a roll call vote. Ms. Demos,
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass,
Aye.
Mr. Stadman,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Vote is unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Sullivan, being voted in as chairperson once again of the Tewksbury School Committee. Congratulations.
Thank you, Superintendent Malone, and obviously, thank you to my colleagues. It's really humbling. It's a tremendous amount of work. It's certainly work that I enjoy doing, and I really feel blessed. I think we have a wonderful, diverse group of people. We have a former school teacher that's a principal. We have an attorney with almost a decade worth of experience and institutional knowledge here within the district, a facilities guy, and someone that's been a manager and a finance person. So I can't thank you guys enough for the trust and the faith you have in me. And my pledge to you and the citizens is to continue to always make decisions what's best for students. And, we're always guided in those decisions to be able to step back and say, how is that going to benefit the kids of our district? So thank you very much. So at this time, I would like to entertain nominations for the position of Vice Chair of the Tewksbury School Committee.
I nominate Jamie Cutlass.
I'll second that.
A nomination and a second. Are there any other nominations for the person of Vice Chair? Seeing none. I'd like to take a roll call vote. Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
I gladly vote aye as well. Congratulations, Mr. Cutlass, on being elected as the Vice Chairman of the Tewksbury School Committee.
Thank you, Mr.
And,
Chairman. Thank you, everyone else.
In our last order of business at this time, I would entertain a nomination for the petition for the position of clerk of the Tewksbury School Committee.
I'll nominate Shannon Demos.
Second.
I have a nomination and a second for Mrs. Demos. Do we have any other motions or nominations for clerk? Seeing none, take a roll call vote. Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much. And congratulations, Mrs. Demos, on being elected the clerk of the Tewksbury School Committee.
Thank you very much.
All right, with that business underway, I'd like, actually, before we move on to the call to order for regular business at 7:15, I would ask everyone that's on the call if we could please bow our heads and ask that we observe a moment of silence for former Tewksbury Memorial High School principal Billy D. Gregorio, as we affectionately knew him. For those of us that were lucky enough to have him as a principal, Billy D. Passed away recently. So I would like to ask that we observe a moment for Mr. D. Gregorio and his family. Thank you. The June 22nd, 2020 regular school committee meeting will be televised and recorded. The virtual meeting, due to the recent open meeting law set forth by the governor during the current state of emergency, will be held as a virtual meeting. To participate, you can call in at 978-771-0819, and you can also view live through televised cable channels, Comcast Channel 22, and Verizon Channel 34, or at youtube.com/Tewksbury TV. As a preliminary matter, I am Keith Sullivan, the chairman of the school committee. Please permit to confirm all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and hear me and give their consent to be recorded this evening. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Cutlass,
Aye.
Mr. Stadman,
Aye.
Mrs. Demos,
Aye.
and Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Staff, can you please also respond in the affirmative? Mr. Malone?
Aye.
Thank you. Mrs. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Libby?
Aye.
And our anticipated guests as well, Mr. Ron Bruin,
Aye.
Mr. Michael Gillespie,
Aye.
Mr. John Weir,
Aye.
Ms. Karen Hodgkin,
Aye.
and Ms. Gracia Dudley.
Aye.
And do we have our awesome runner, Miss Michaela Page, with us this evening? Okay.
I don't believe she's on the call, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. This open meeting of the school committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Executive Order of March 12, 2020, due to COVID. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID, we've been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. Anyone interested in participating can call 978-771-0819. For this meeting, Tewksbury Public Schools is convening by WebEx as posted on the town's website, which identifies how the public may join. View live through televised cable channels Comcast 22, Verizon 34, or at youtube.com/Tewksbury TV. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and aired live, and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that people may be able to see you, and take care not to share your computer screen. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available by request. Please email Gail Johnson at gjohnson@k12.mass.us for a copy of the agenda packet. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless otherwise noted. The rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate meetings. And if anyone has a comment or question, it can be submitted in the chat window and it will be recognized when appropriate. For any responses, please wait until I yield the floor to you. If members wish to or attendees, please do so through the chair. For Citizens Forum, I will ask members of the public to identify themselves by giving their full name and address for the record. They will then be afforded up to 3 minutes to comment on any current or previous agenda item. And finally, every vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. All right. Thank you all. And first order of business for this evening, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Malone for our recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My screen and other things continue to cut out a little bit, so if I stop, Ms. Regan might be able to take over. But once again, we're here to honor one of our outstanding students, Michaela Page, Tewksbury Memorial High School student, being honored this evening for being recognized as the Gatorade Player of the Year, which is a proud recognition of the nation's most elite high school athletes, and for not only athletic excellence, but also high standards of academic achievement and exemplary character. This is Michaela's second time winning this award, and we're so proud of Michaela. And Mr. Druin will talk about her a little bit and a little bit about the reasoning why she cannot be here. Typically, she makes our school committee meetings. She's been at enough of them, but she's just an outstanding athlete. That's what we're primarily here to recognize her for, but she is an academic scholar, and she's just an outstanding character student, just the total package of a student we're so proud of here in Tewksbury, and someone really that has brought great credit upon this school district, and we couldn't be happier. Mr. Druin, would you talk a little bit more about Michaela, please?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mr. Malone. Mr. Chairman, thanks for having me on tonight. Michaela sends her thanks. She's out of town running in an elite race in Indiana. Her and her dad took a ride out to Indiana to try to break a United States record in a 4x800 relay. She's running with some different kids from across the country to try to set a national, a world record in the 4x800 relay. So that's the kind of kid we're dealing with. Academically, she's outstanding. It's go time for her right now with the offers coming in. She's been very, very busy with some elite schools that are chasing her. So again, she sends her thanks. And obviously she's been here a bunch of times. This is important to her, but with the pandemic, the ability to get out and run in a national race was a real good opportunity for her, a tough one to pass up. So I hope you guys can understand, but she's very appreciative of all you guys do for her.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Druin. And Mr.
You're
Chairman,
welcome.
I believe we have a proclamation for Michaela.
Okay. Okay, Michaela, on behalf of the Tewksbury School Committee, it's my honor to read this resolution of recognition to you this evening. Whereas Michaela Page, Tewksbury Memorial High School student athlete, has been named 2019-2020 Gatorade Massachusetts Girls Track and Field Athlete of the Year, and whereas Michaela is a two-time winner of the Gatorade Award and is the first Gatorade Massachusetts Girls Track and Field Athlete of the Year to be chosen from TMHS, and whereas the Gatorade Award recognizes not only outstanding athletics, but also high standards of academic achievement and exemplary character on and off the field, and whereas Michaela has been distinguished as Massachusetts' best high school girls track and field athlete, maintained a 4.03 GPA in the classroom, and volunteered locally and donated time to fundraising, and whereas Michaela Page has brought great pride, recognition, and honor to herself and her family, to the Tewksbury Memorial High School, and to the town of Tewksbury, now therefore be it resolved that the Tewksbury School Committee applauds, honors, and recognizes the exceptional performance of Michaela Page. Congratulations. And Mr. Druin, thank you very much for joining us this evening. She's a wonderful student athlete, and I hope we can get her back on the track sooner than later and see the awesome stuff that she's capable of. So thanks again for joining us. We certainly appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate you guys, all you guys do for our kids. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. I'd like to now ask Mr. Malone to go on to our next agenda item, which is the Seal of Bioliteracy Award and Honorees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And at this point, I'd like to hand it off to Assistant Superintendent Regan, who has been very specifically involved in the Bioliteracy Award. So, Ms. Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Superintendent Malone. Before I tell you a bit about the Seal of Bioliteracy, I'd like to welcome and recognize two of our highly esteemed educators, Ms. Grassa Dudley. Grassa, if you could just give a little wave. She is a world language teacher at the Tewksbury Memorial High School. And then Ms. Karen Hodson, if you could give us a little wave. There's Karen. She is our lead English language education teacher for the district. So let me tell, especially for those who have not heard about the Seal of Biliteracy, it's a national movement that started in 2012 in California. It's to recognize high school students who could speak, listen, read, and write proficiently in one or more languages in addition to English. In Massachusetts, the Language Opportunity Coalition ran a pilot program for 3 years that culminated in Governor Charlie Baker signing the Massachusetts Seal into law November 22nd, 2017. The legislation is a strong statement that supports and further develops multilingualism in our state. The Seal of Biliteracy places a focus on what the students can do with the second or third language. For English language learners, the Seal rewards students who attain biliteracy in English through showing proficiency on the MCAS and through their own native language. For world language learners, the Seal encourages students to pursue long-term language study and to develop proficiency rather than grades. And this is specifically noted because there's a speaking and listening component to this test in order to get this achievement. Story Memorial High School graduation requires 2 years of a world language. All of our students being recognized tonight have studied their language for 4 years or more. Some completed an independent study during the summer of their junior year as well, which really highlights their commitment to language development. The Seal of Biliteracy places the focus on what students can do with the second or third language. I'd like to ask Karen and Grassa in a minute to give us a little bit of information why this is important. But let me just say that the Seal of Biliteracy provides nationally recognized evidence. This seal and goes on to the high school graduate's transcript and goes off to the college. It's something they can put on their resume. And what we know is that this is not only a critical 21st century skill, that the being biliterate or multilingual can certainly advance a person's career, as bilingual professionals are in high demand in the workforce. So without any further ado, you'd much rather hear from our two teachers, and they can highlight why this Seal of Biliteracy is so important at our high school. And then when they're ready, I will show the presentation again for our award recipients. Grassa, Karen?
Thanks, Brenda. Thanks, everybody, for having me. I'd like to thank you for acknowledging these students' commitment to language learning. Typically, these students would receive a graduation cord and a medal to wear at the ceremony. Unfortunately, circumstances changed our original process. We appreciate this opportunity to honor and celebrate our students.
I, as well, thank you for this opportunity. Data shows that for a learner to achieve an intermediate mid-level of proficiency, it requires at least a 4-year program of study. Intermediate mid-level of proficiency means that the student can function with the language. In the future, we would love to expand our language program to include the middle school so that more students can reach this proficiency level. So Brenda, if you could please bring up the so this year, recipients of the Bioliteracy Achievement Award, the students that achieved the intermediate mid-level are Diego Carneiro Monteiro for Spanish and Portuguese, Tracy Costa for Portuguese, Rebecca De Francesco for Spanish, Caitlin Fiore for Spanish, Michael Fowler for Spanish, Owen Gilligan, Spanish, and Emily Hankins, also Spanish. I lost Karen.
Karen, you unmute your mic.
Mute.
Should I do it?
Yeah.
There you are.
Sorry. Sorry. In order to receive the Mass State Seal, a student must score in the intermediate to high level of proficiency. This year's recipients are Alexa Chesbaro for Spanish, Emily Estevez for English and Spanish, Andrew Lapia for Spanish, Kyle for Spanish, and then Brenda Miranda for English and Portuguese.
And in order to receive the state seal with distinction, a student must score in the advanced level of proficiency. This year's recipients are Amaya Allen for Spanish, Megan Cunningham for Spanish, and Jasmine Wan for Spanish. We really thank you this opportunity to be able to serve these students at this time, since they were not able to really, have it on the graduation program or all of those things. But most importantly, we thank you for your support of our programs.
Oh, well put, well done.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. I would just like to add, ladies, on behalf of the, this is obviously important to us. This is a wonderful award that these students should be acknowledged for. And we certainly, want to make sure that we are acknowledging all of our students, that are high achievers. So kudos to you guys. We obviously miss seeing you guys in person. And hopefully next year, we can have you back like we usually do in front of the school committee for this recognition. So thank you for taking the time out of your summer to join us. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
all right, that brings us to student representative report. Unless Jack's right there next to you, John, I think.
Jack is not here. I'm actually at work, so he's not here
Okay.
with me.
We'll go on to presentations, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Malone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to attempt to keep my camera off to reserve some bandwidth here because I keep breaking out. But we have Mr. John Ware, principal of the Wynn Middle School, and Mr. Michael Gillespie, teacher at the Wynn Middle School, and also the organizer of our Washington, D.C. trip annually, which is an outstanding trip for our 8th grade students. It's not an easy task for a staff member to pull that off regularly. Mr. Gillespie's willingness to do that and his attention to detail is certainly recognized. This past year's trip was unfortunately canceled on short notice in regards to the pandemic. I do think Mr. Gillespie handled that cancellation very well and took on some significant parent questioning and concerns around that of an issue that was not of his doing. So he's a true professional and a person that cares about students. And typically this time of year, we would be looking at some of these overnight trips and out-of-state trips for school committee approval. But I think at this point, Mr. Gillespie and Mr. Ware would like to address the committee with some likely ideas in regards to the future of this Washington, D.C. trip this year in regards to current conditions. Mr. Ware, can I turn it over to you?
Sure. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like the Superintendent said, Mr. Gillespie for many years now has run this outstanding trip and done it very successfully. And based on last year with the virus and the cancellation and the things that came around with that, looking forward to this year, he has some concerns and he's outlined some of those for me. Part of it is already at this point, we would have been starting to raise planned fundraisers, and students would have already had the opportunity to make some payments towards the process earlier in the year is helpful to allay those costs. And so Mr. Gillespie, I know will have a few more things he'd like to sort of express going down the line, what he's thinking about. He's also done a lot of research this spring to identify a company that would allow for 100% refund in case of a force majeure, some major cancellation for something like a virus, which would prevent the whole group from going. And so he's found a company that's willing to do that. So he can tell you a little bit more about that, I think, at this point, and tell you maybe a few more of his concerns that he might have going forward. Mr. Gillespie?
Thank you, Mr. Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, it was a big disappointment this year with having the trip canceled, due to circumstances out of everybody's control. And going forward for the 2021 trip, obviously, there's a concern of a resurgence of the COVID, if we're we're still not out of the woods yet, and how that would affect things going forward. The opportunity itself is still, I think it's a fantastic trip, and I love being a part of it. Also, I wouldn't have been continuing to run this for as long as I have. And I know one of the biggest concerns that we had with the cancellation of the 2020 trip was the tour company and how that was handled in town. And I know there was a lot of issues and justifiably so in regards to how that whole process was dealt with. So going forward for 2021, I did look at a number of other tour companies and expressed our major concern with the cancellation and how that would run out for 2021 if we had to go through that same process again. The company that we felt was the best at handling this was a company called Tour DC with us. They're a smaller company, but because of that, I think they spend a lot of time with the very much attention to detail and would be able to give us what we're used to with the tours from EF, but at a smaller kind of more intimate grouping. And the two owners of the company have been in the tour business for over 20 years each. They've worked with larger companies. They know how the whole process works. So they are very familiar with it. And the people that they have working for them are also been in the business for a number of years. And one of the things that I liked from this group that we hadn't had in the past was they have what's called CFAR, the cancel for any reason insurance, and that's always been open as an option for parents in the past, but it's been an additional cost to if for some reason they have to cancel for medical issues or whatever is the problem, they would get the full refund on that. Tour DC with us, the new company that we're looking at, has actually rolled that CFAR insurance into the tour cost, so it's something that they have actually mandated signing up because they want to cover themselves as well in case that things happen, and they don't want to be running into those issues. So I thought that was a major part, and they have had plenty of preparations in place for COVID, just to deal with that, and it is still an issue in the future. As far as like wiping down buses every time the kids get on and off the bus, maintaining distances from other tour groups that are out there, and just having the buses cleaned constantly while we're out there, since we are very much frequently on and off trips from location to the bus during the 4 days that we're down there. So they're taking a lot of those precautions into consideration. And like you said, that, and in addition to the knowledge that they have, I thought that this was a good company to go with, and provided that we can have safely run a trip for next year, it was something that I would like to get in place.
And Mike, does the cost of that include like a full bus, so that would it require like a full bus of students? Do you know?
Are you talking like in regards to like the regulations of busing distances, or how does that work?
No, is the tour cost based on if we're able to put all the students on a bus, like fill a bus? Do you know?
That's a flat rate. So I know that in the past there've been like different break points depending on the number of kids that are enrolled. That's the flat rate for whatever we take. Okay. And they're aware of the numbers that we've had in the past, and based off of just a parent survey that I did earlier, so this towards the end of the 2020 school year, Still seems to be a significant interest from the 7th grade parents moving up to 8th grade for this trip for next year.
Mr. Gillespie and Mr. Weir, and typically our process would be to have a written proposal for a out-of-state overnight field trip. And I know you've looked at that, Mr. Gillespie, and other pieces like that. Are you looking for feedback from the committee on the means by which to either move forward in further develop this? Are you looking for feedback from the committee specific to not running this trip for this year? What is your desire?
There was a proposal that was sent that was originally written up in May. I think it was tabled for the last meeting for June. So I was still looking to see about approval for the trip, and if there was something that was not going to happen, then just kind of what we could do for the future.
So that proposal was on last month's agenda. It was pulled in regards to some further discussions such as this. I don't think the committee in full has seen the proposal. I do believe the chairman has seen the proposal. Mr. Chairman, what is your feeling or the feeling of the community on guiding Mr. Gillespie and Mr. Weir? Is this something we should consider in review Mr. Gillespie's application? Do we want to take some time and see where this kind of relates to the pandemic? I mean, we have the safety of the trip. We have the, the concern if the same thing happens this year and it gets canceled. It looks like Mr. Gillespie has researched that very well. There's also the piece of the destination of the trip and what that will look like in the pandemic, and if that looks sharply different than here in Tewksbury.
Yes, no, I appreciate you coming on, Mr. Gillespie and Mr. Weir. And I did briefly look at it, obviously with COVID, and I think, there's certainly some unrest this year with, I know I personally fielded a lot of questions from parents that didn't get fully refunded. I certainly appreciate, that you went out and researched. So I'd like to, I'm sure, I think I have some questions. The board members might have some questions. So I'm glad you're here and Mr. Weir's here. So at this time, I'm just going to open it up to my colleagues and, ask some questions and we'll go from there. If that's okay. So I'm going to go to Mr. Wilson. You have any questions regarding the trip or?
I do not, Keith, at this time. I mean, I echo what you said, and, I know that there are concerns in the community and obviously concerns with pandemic and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of moving parts on this one.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mrs. Demos?
Hi, thank you. Like Mr. Malone said, we were not privy to the plan and the information, so I don't feel as though I'm prepared to give a decision on that. I can share with you that my thoughts go to the fact that this would be a school-sanctioned trip, and we want to be cognizant of where we are come the springtime as far as this pandemic is and what the numbers are. I'd like to see a little bit more about this tour DC with us. I'd like to look into the credentials and, the Corey checks, and I'd like to know more details about the company before I would endorse a trip of the students leaving our district. And again, just because of the destination where it is and what the world is like today, we don't know what's going to be open and what's going to be closed at that point. I definitely don't want to take that experience away from the kids. My own girls have gone on trips like this, and it's, it's memory and it's hands-on learning, and I want everyone to be able to experience that, but we're in some unprecedented and difficult times right now, and I would hate to make a decision with the information until I've been privy to read through all the information and we kind of get closer to the date so we see what it looks like for the safety of the kids. But thank you for all the work that you've done previous, and I look forward to reading it.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Demos. Mr. Cutlass? Mr. Cutlass, are you there? I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I was on mute. I'd like to thank Mr. Gillespie for all his work, but I do agree with my colleagues, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Demos, that maybe it's a little premature and we should revisit it again in the future. I know it's a great trip. I know the people loved it, but maybe given the COVID and the pandemic, we might wait a little bit on this.
Thank you, Mr. Cutlass. And Mr. Statman?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Cutlass. Obviously, it was unfortunate that my son couldn't partake in this year's DC trip, and unfortunately, as you know, obviously the world is crumbling around us. And I do appreciate, Mr. Gillespie, all your hard work and working to find a new reputable place out there, because obviously we know that our previous company didn't do so well with the refunding and everything like that. So I appreciate your work and scrambling into finding some other things. But I do look forward to presenting at a future meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to speak for yes, I don't want to speak for Mr. Gillespie, but I think one of the pieces might be here that he's likely got a timeline of when he would be able to, one, book the trip, and two, set up a payment schedule friendly for parents to do over a period of time. And again, I don't want to speak for him, but I think he fully understands that we're in a pandemic situation. But he might run into a scenario where if we can't approve it by a certain time, he would have to likely not pursue it any further. It's unlikely the conditions of this pandemic are going to change anytime soon. But Mr. Gillespie, is that an accurate assessment?
Yes, Ms. Malone, it is. Ordinarily, I would have this trip booked the spring of the fall of the year going into it, just to give family more time to spread out payments. And that's after recent conversation with the owners of Tour DC with us, they are having other schools that are starting to book for 2021. So yeah, I mean, there is a bit of a time sensitive issue. And I absolutely understand the conditions that we're in. That's, we don't know what the future is going to be like next month, next spring. And, making that decision is, it's tricky. It's my real reason for kind of pushing this is just, it's been a great opportunity, and it's something that if it's kind of continues to fall, that I just didn't want something that would be part of our school that would get lost. Because again, it's been last 7 years, something we're starting to bring back into our schools that have been, definitely a very memorable experience for a lot of our 8th graders coming out of the Tewksbury Public Schools. But I understand both sides of it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a suggestion for the committee?
Sure, please do.
And I know it's a little bit awkward and out of procedure, because typically we would approve an out-of-state, an overnight trip in its entirety based on the plan. This is that Mr. Gillespie has run many times. Granted, he has researched a new company, so there's some aspects in that. But I'm wondering if the committee would be comfortable guiding Mr. Gillespie either to possibly move forward with the planning and hold in abeyance school committee approval to a time and point where school committee can make a real informed decision not so much, I think, on Mr. Gillespie's plan, but on one status of the pandemic will be as far as the trip goes, and possibly, and it'd be completely up to Mr. Gillespie and Mr. Ware, if that was a conditional planning with parents that they understood that not only, the typical issues that fall into scheduling of a trip that could change it or alter it, but that in fact the trip is not fully approved by the school committee, but moving forward in the planning phase for a future. I would also be concerned if the committee approved it in its entirety, and yet in such an unknown situation with the pandemic, not only here, but within the destination of where the trip is going, to give Mr. Gillespie some room to, if he feels that he can successfully plan it's the right program and it will work, to do that, but to delay actual approval of the overnight and out-of-state trip by the school committee as a time where you can make a good determination, not only based on the specifics of the trip, but also on the current status of the pandemic.
Sure, that seems fair enough. And I'd just like to add to Mr. Gillespie, I think we all share the same sentiment that it's a wonderful trip and it's a good opportunity for our kids. And I hope you don't mistake us, just trying to be thoughtful and logical in today's world for not wanting to be able to provide that. We certainly want to be able to provide that trip. It's just what that looks like, it is what we got to struggle with right now. And I'm certainly, Chris, that certainly seems fair. I'll open it back up to my colleagues for their opinion. Mr. Cutlass?
Oh, yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm fine with Ms. Malone's position, and I'll make that in the form of a motion if you would like.
Okay. Let's just hear from Mrs. Demos.
Mr. Malone, could you be clear again as to what your motion was? I guess I'm not understanding, because again, I didn't have the information, so I don't want to necessarily say that I'm approving anything and giving. I just want to ask you to repeat what you would have as a motion.
My sense is, and I'm not sure it has to be in the form of a motion, and I'd like to Mr. Gillespie to correct me if I'm wrong, but if we allowed Mr. Gillespie to go ahead and move on the planning, not approving the actual trip, but proceed on the planning. In the meantime, certainly the school committee could be given the packet that Mr. Gillespie had produced that gives the information on that. But my concern with any trip of this nature is that the previous trip was done in regards to a state of emergency, both statewide and nationally. My concern is the fluctuation of this pandemic, that the school committee may need to make a decision on student travel based on current conditions that may not fall under a state of emergency or may not be identified. And I would just want the students in Tewksbury to be certainly in a safe situation if that occurs. Typically, we would approve that trip in its entirety, which would then, short of a element that occurred last year, which was a pandemic, that would go forward. I don't know if Mr. Gillespie is comfortable moving forward with planning without school committee approval. Again, it would be just planning. I think we'd have to be open and honest with parents and students that we are planning a trip that it had not been approved yet, mainly due to the pandemic, not the specifics of the trip that had happened annually or anything like that. But I think I'm trying to help Mr. Gillespie, look at a timeline of planning that has to coincide with an ongoing pandemic of a condition we have no idea what it's going to look like in the spring when the trip occurs. Would that be helpful, Mr. Gillespie? I don't know.
That would be helpful from my end. I mean, as long as I'm able to, get in touch with the people from Tour DC with us, get a presentation out remotely to parents about, and again, my issue with signing up is always giving that option to spread payments out, give them more time. So if I can get to that point where we can I can present the information to the parents, let them know that this is still pending school committee approval and starting to get them enrolled. I mean, I can handle the other aspects of planning with figuring out roommates, medical forms, and all that stuff during the course of the school year. It's just what people here are comfortable with.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gillespie. Mrs. Demos, so I guess what I'm hearing is it would just simply allow for the planning, but would not in any way be an approval from the school committee.
So I have no problem with that whatsoever. I just don't want it to be addressed to the parents as though it was approved just yet until we have all the information in front of us.
Agreed. Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
I would agree. I'm in support. I would love for us to be able to do the trip. That would be great. But with the apprehensions, I think let's get as much information as we can and then make a decision.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And Mr. Stabman?
Yeah, I agree.
Great. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Cutlass. You have a motion, sir?
I'll make that motion for Mr. Gillespie to just engage in the planning for the trip and to provide the school committee with his information at a later date.
Okay, thank you.
Great. This requires a roll call vote. Actually requires a second. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve Mr. Gillespie to allow the planning of the 2021 field trip to Washington, D.C. Planning only. It is not approved by the school committee. Pending school committee approval. Mr. Statman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much, Mr. Gillespie and Mr. Ware. And hopefully, things get on the better side of things, certainly for students for next year. And, we wish you good luck in the planning of the trip.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay. The next order of business is the Citizens Forum. Brian, do we have any callers?
We have no callers, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. I'll probably check in one more time before we exit, but if you want to let me know if someone does, that would be great. Next order of business is to turn it over to our clerk, Mrs. Shannon Demos, for the approval of our minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from June 9th, 2020, virtual special meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the June 9th special meeting. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. It's a unanimous vote.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from June 10th, 2020, virtual regular meeting.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the June 10th, 2020 regularly scheduled virtual meeting. Requires a roll call vote. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Next, Mrs. Demos, if you could please read the payroll, please.
Thank you. I move the school department payroll for the period ending June 11th, 2020 to be approved and certified in the amounts and categories as shown in the total amount of $1,332,343.61.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the June 11th, 2020. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Thank you, Mrs. Demos.
Mr. Chair, I move the school department payroll for the period ending June 18th, 2020 to be approved and certified in the amounts and categories as shown for a total amount of $585,716.10.
I have a motion and a second to approve the payroll period ending June 18th, 2020. Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well.
Mr. Chair, I move the school department payroll for the period ending July 9th, 2020 to be approved and certified in the amounts and categories as shown for a total amount of $138,592.35.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the payroll period ending July 9th, 2020. That's the FY20 in the amount of $138,592.35. Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. And finally,
Mr. Chair, I move the school department payroll for the period ending July 9th, 2020 to be approved and certified in the amounts and categories as shown for the total amount of $988,908.47.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the payroll period ending July 9th, 2020, FY21 in the amount of $988,908.47. Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Other unanimous votes. Thank you very much, Mrs. Demos. And now I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent Malone for his report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, we were going to have Mr. John Bernard, the new interim Tewksbury Memorial High School principal, here in person. But when this was moved to a remote meeting, we'd rather make sure Mr. Bernard can be here in person to meet all of you. So when we're in person, hopefully next month, we'll be able to do that. A reminder to the committee that through Mr. Pelletier's office, we continue to plan for an in-person summer school experience for some of our special education students, our most needy students. He's done some significant planning and preparation for that, working with parents and teachers to set that up. We hope to have a 2-week program at the beginning of August for our most needy special education students. We'll certainly be mindful of the status of the pandemic in town. Before that moves, we've been working with the Board of Health on that. We are a little bit concerned that some summer programs in other communities in the state have developed positive tests for COVID. So we want to make sure we have a safe experience for students. But the planning involved has been outstanding by Mr. Pelletier and his teams, and we look forward to that moving forward. Also, congratulations. We have secured again the Summer and Vacation Learning Program grant through Dr. Basteri in regards to credit recovery at Tewksbury Memorial High School to include incoming students and current students. And that will be virtual learning to support those students that need credit recovery over the summer, which is something traditionally we do. And even though we are currently in a pandemic and the schools aren't currently open, we'll be able to perform that need in regards to remote learning for that process. Also a reminder that the MIAA has made a determination that no interscholastic sports can begin before September 14th. That includes practicing. So we do have some activities going on at town fields in regards to captain practices and typical summer pieces of that. However, no organized interscholastic athletics will occur across the state until September 14th. I think they're also going to wait to see what the opening plans are going to be across the street for each district. And we've all been very busy with this pandemic and with planning for reopening of the schools, and certainly trying to address some of the situations nationally in regards to racism. But one of the things that has occurred in the district that sometimes doesn't come to mind is the full construction has begun on the Ryan School site, and that the demolition of much of the stands and other structures at the field have gone down. The area has begun to be cleared, and the site is being prepped for construction. There's a great deal of activity going on there right now. They are taking advantage of the fact that there is no school in session currently, and certainly they are working at a feverish pace, so we're glad to see that. We've been coordinating with AlphaBest for the past couple months in their ability to look at offering summer camps. Once again, they are licensed by EEC and have to follow those guidelines. They worked extensively to try to manage developing program for summer camps. However, the EEC guidelines around additional staffing, student ratios, cohorts, additional nursing staff, all of those elements would significantly raise the cost of those summer camps onto families. It would limit the number of students who would have been eligible for that, and it would have restricted the operation specifically in the activities that were conducted in the summer camp in regards to spacing to students, locations of students that would have to be together at all times, no field trips, no leaving the premises. AlphaBest did a fairly exhaustive attempt to try to work through that, surveyed their parents to see what number of parents would be interested even at that cost and with those restrictions. And quite simply, the combination of not enough parents that were going to be willing to take that on, and also AlphaBest not happy with what the program would look like for students with all those restrictions in place. AlphaBest has made the determination they will not be offering summer camp and have notified parents of that. AlphaBest will continue to work with us to develop fall programming for the reopening of school. Some of that will depend and directly relate to how we reopen as a district. They are certainly willing to move on that and plan with that, and they have. We don't know what level of restrictions will be put on them for regards from their licensure status as far as COVID precautions and how that works for them. It is a little bit different than school, so we'll have to see what that looks like, but they're committed to making sure they exhaust all opportunities to provide before and after school services for students once we open in the school year. Likely, if we're all remote, they would not be able to operate and utilize the building, but we'll have to see what option we move forward with in opening the school and how we can support our students before and after school with the help of AlphaBest. We continue to look at funding resources. I know Mr. Libby will talk a little bit about the CARES Act fund and some of the elements in regards to this pandemic in preparation for opening in the fall. And the district leadership team has done some significant work in professional development around racism. Ms. Regan will talk about a level of professional development both her and I went through with the Superintendent's Association. We've currently engaged in a book study with the entire leadership team over a couple of different books regards to dealing with racism in schools and how we can best support our staff and best support our students on that. And again, our primary goal right now is going to be trying to figure out how we're going to return, but what needs to run alongside with that is certainly our commitment as a district to deal with racism and to find the appropriate educational opportunities for our staff and students to really address that issue over a long period of time. This is not a short-term issue we're looking at addressing. With that, I will hand it over to Ms. Regan for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. Just as we did at the last meeting with a lot of information prior to Ms. Regan, I just want to check in with my colleagues to see if they have any questions or comments. I'll start with Mr. Cutlass. Mr. Cutlass, you're on mute. Do you have any questions for the superintendent? All right, let's try Mr. Wilson.
I have no comments at this time, Keith. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Stadman?
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Demos?
Can I just ask, when you were in regards to AlphaBest, there was no options for any sort of remote opportunities for the students. Is that what I heard?
Right. I mean, that would, I think what would come with that is when we get into remote type pieces where this is in a summer camp situation and before and after school, certainly we highlight the activities, but it's really an opportunity for childcare for most parents as well. Would they charge for that? How would they do that? I mean, we've done some extension things from the district to help families over the summer, and we've done some things from community services. I think AlphaBest would likely have a difficult time charging people for a remote service that's based on childcare, and they would have to go out and hire their own people to do that. I'm not sure what they would charge people to do that and if that would meet a need. Certainly we can look at if we have families over the summertime or even in the fall, if they're looking for enrichment opportunities they can do online or activities. We have produced that through community services and enrichment. We can certainly increase that, but AlphaBest is primary a resource that does in-person childcare and activity in camps and before and after school care for students.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Demos. Any questions for Mr. Cutlass?
I'm all set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'm good as well, Superintendent. Thank you. Mrs. Regan, I'd like to turn it over to you for your report, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Superintendent Malone and myself, I really want to thank the committee for your annual support and allowing us to attend the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Executive Institute. I think you'd be happy to know that this year it was very much less expensive than in the past years, as it was a virtual conference for only 2 days, and we were able to attend the conference from the comfort of our office rather than down in Falmouth. As Superintendent Malone alluded to, the best sessions came on day 2 of the conference, and those sessions really focused on helping to guide school leaders to think through our long-term planning and our need to further create and support schools where diversity, belonging, inclusion, and equity are our top priority. We know that we can always improve, and we certainly know that we can't apply a short-term goal or fix to racism, not at our school where it may exist, and certainly not in the world. This is a long-term commitment and a long-term priority where we will plan for through several years. One of the presenters, the best presenter, I would say, of the whole conference was Donisa Amante Jackson, and she represents an organization called DEEP, D-E-E-P. We've reached out to her. We're hoping to work with her or the organization over several years. So stay tuned. We'll we'll let you know more on that. Also, very exciting portion of the Day 2 conference was listening to students and their perspective on how we can use student voice to really shape what equity feels like in our schools. The students we heard from, I wish Mr. Ware was still online, from Project 351. As you know, the 351 school districts over the Commonwealth have a student at the middle school level in 8th grade participate in Project 351, which unites our Massachusetts students through youth service and leadership. These are clearly our future leaders. And these students of color throughout the Commonwealth that are part of the project really gave us some great ideas about how we engage students, and particularly at our middle and high school, to talk with each other, to start really difficult conversations and listen to each other. And, you know, I think it's through our student voice that we can bring that equity, you know, to light in an honest way for our students, which is really what we're always looking to do, is include all of them. And I think you'll see, or you did see, just the seal of biliteracy and our commitment to honoring other languages and cultures, and that work our students do to do that is an opportunity where we are giving our students that belonging in our schools. So you see in the consent agenda several documents that we sent out to the local business community, and certainly the annual letter we're required to send out to families just to show our commitment at honoring bilingualism. All right, what I am very excited to tell you about is a virtual PD program, I guess you would say, that we've purchased for the entire 2021 full school year. Multiple world-renowned and, you know, national presenters are canceling their presentations to school districts everywhere. Some of the real big names like Tom Murray and Jay McTighe, again, and you've heard me talk about him, participated in this First Education Learners First Summit. It's the first they've ever done. It was a 2-day virtual summit that kicked off Monday of this week, the 20th, and Tuesday, the 21st. Our entire district leadership team participated in the live portion of that summit, along with some of our school support personnel, our school psychologists, guidance counselors, adjustment counselors. And the goal was that we attended the live keynotes. There were 8 live keynotes and 60 live breakout sessions. And all of the topics surrounded the issue of coming back. You know, COVID, here we come. COVID or not, we're coming back. Grading in this new era, better teaching and learning in a remote platform, all kinds of topics around the issues we all face when we bring our staff back and we need to support them. What's really exciting is not only the live summit that we got to participate in, is that these virtual keynotes and breakout sessions are available to us through the entire school year for every single staff member, not just our teachers, but our aides, our custodians, our secretaries. And we get to take what we saw through the live summit and develop a PD plan for the district. You, the school committee, will be welcome to attend any of those virtual sessions yourself, should you see a topic that you'd like to learn more about. So I'm proud of all of our staff and our administrators who attended, because they'll be helping the district formulate that PD plan for next year. As well, very proud of our teachers who are working on summer curriculum work. We have 90 educators working 1,390 hours of summer curriculum work currently ongoing. And what will happen is they'll culminate that work and their principals will sign off on it. And this will help to develop our curriculum units even further, but also layer in some really quality lesson planning for not only live lessons, but that can easily pivot to remote lessons. So that's work very worth doing over the summer. Our ed tech team, led by Jason Stamp, Ms. Lisa Bailey, and Jessica Simpson, are also developing virtual asynchronous, what does that mean? Video recorded lessons to help our remote learning PD for our staff. We'll see lots more from them over the summer made available, but then live PD to get our staff back on board with, again, being able to pivot your lessons with technology, whether the students are in front of you or remote. I want to just remind you finally that our admin retreat is August 18th, Wednesday the Tuesday the 18th and Wednesday the 19th. Then it culminates in a school committee workshop. That's the lengthy workshop that you meet with all of our admin team as we illustrate our, I'd like to call it school improvement plan. It's really school preservation plan, a continuation of our 1920 school improvement plan. Certainly our reopening plan in full, because we will have delivered that on the 10th to DESE, and then our district goals and around how we will look at improving and developing plans for equity throughout all of our schools. That concludes my report.
Right. Thank you, Mrs. Reagan. Just before we proceed to Mr. Libby, Mr. Cutlass, do you have any questions?
No, all set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Stadman?
Nope. Thank you, Ms. Reagan.
Great. Thank you. Mrs. Demos?
No questions. I just want to make sure that we're saying a great big thank you to those 90 teachers that have given up a lot of their time to create that curriculum that will serve our students well.
Great. Thank you. And Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, just thank you, Brenda, for the report.
Okay. Thank you.
One
Yep.
other thing, two of those teachers, and I'm glad you said that, Shannon, are online still with us right now. I know they're going to probably, but the two teachers sitting here are very invested in that work for us on behalf of our students. So I thank them as well.
Well, thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Libby?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of updates on some funding sources that have been made available to the town and the school department in the past, in recent time, given the pandemic. And the first being the CARES Act funding, which is also called the ESSER, Elementary School Education Emergency Relief Fund. That's the same thing. You hear it called, those terms are synonymous, the CARES and the ESSER funding. So our town has been allocated $280,897 for the CARES Act funding, which will be presenting in a grant that's due August 14th to the state. Another funding source we've recently been made available to us is the Coronavirus Relief Funding School Reopening Act. Tewksbury's been allocated $742,950 in the form of a grant. Both of these grants can be used for many different types of activity to support the reopening of schools in a safe manner and a way that's best for students. So that was some good news we received recently about some funding sources. There's also a remote learning technology essentials grant. This is a competitive grant, but we plan to submit an application for that grant as well. That amount would be unknown, but that would be used to support technology in a remote learning setting, which certainly will help students in our district. Second update for the committee is some of our planning that's going on, sort of our non-educational departments. We're developing with some of our vendors, contractors, and our custodial union a very comprehensive cleaning plan. Should we return to an on-site plan in some manner? Plan will include daily cleaning that will happen during the day, nightly cleaning that will happen at night, and a deeper enhanced cleaning plan as well that will be sporadically done during the week and on weekends whenever that can be accomplished. Our food services group is thinking of all options. They're as typical as of our food service group, and Ms. Mugford, her mantra is, we'll make it work, whatever the plan is. We're working with our transportation vendors on many different plans as well. We can, with all these ancillary groups, we can pretty much expect to see some cost increases. With transportation, we'll most likely be adding vehicles, depending on the options that we lay out. Due to the current guidance that's out with the state, it greatly reduces the number of students we can put on vehicles. So either double runs are a possibility on some of these routes, or additional vehicles to kind of get our transportation services done, at least similar to the manner we've provided in the past, as well as extra cleaning of the vehicles in between runs on a nightly basis, and then an enhanced cleaning when we have time to fit those in. We'll also be we are required to provide PPE for drivers and monitors on our vehicles. So some of that funding that I spoke of earlier will be used in those areas to support those sort of ancillary student services that we provide to the district. The bottom line, though, is all those groups stand ready to support whatever the district plan is going forward. They're working on a lot of different scenarios and plan to be ready for whichever one the district finally lands on. And that's my report for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Libby. Mr. Cutlass, do you have any questions?
Just one, Mr. Chairman, for Mr. Libby. Have we contracted with outside people to do cleaning in addition to our custodial staff?
That's a consideration. As of right now, we have not. We do have some contracted services in mind, but we do have a, well, I should say our enhanced cleaning would include some contracted services. I don't know if you're talking about like a daily cleaning or nightly cleaning.
You haven't done that yet, but it's
something we're considering, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Libby.
Thank you, Mr. Cutlass. Mr. Wilson?
I have nothing. Thank you, Dave.
Great. Mr. Stabman?
I have nothing as of now.
Great. Mrs. Dean?
Hi, I just have a few, Dave. You referred to the coronavirus virus grant. That was the $742,950 one. What was the due date on that?
The due date?
Yeah.
August 31st, we have to have the grant submitted.
The 31st. And with these grants that we're talking about with the CARES, these remote learning and things, will we be seeing an itemized list on how we're spending this money?
Yeah, with all our grants, we'll be setting up a separate fund for each of these grants, and a budget as well, which we follow. And we generally create an account in our financial system for each of the budget line items.
Yeah. So the CARES Act, right? A lot of the PPEs coming out of that. Are we working with the town with, with where we have to provide the PPE for the drivers and things? Is this just the $280,000 CARES allotted just to the school side of the town right now? Is this for us to provide for the PPE?
Yeah, that is the town. That is the school's portion.
That's our portion of it.
Yep.
Okay.
Of the elementary, secondary education, and emergency relief funding.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything that we were responsible for in addition to it. With the custodians cleaning plan, did we get one of those misters that you can spray into the classrooms and it kills all the germs on contact immediately? Does our school district have those just yet, or no? Are we looking into those?
We ordered one for each building last week.
We do, okay.
Yeah.
And we
We found a vendor that had some in stock.
Right, and we've used the misters before within the district, and we've also contracted with the service Nano that actually comes in and puts a brand new surface on all the touch surfaces. We haven't done that in a little while because we haven't had the surfaces touched.
Yeah.
But that would have to be part of a deep cleaning plan overall. But I think once those are on order right now, and with one in each building, we'd be able to do that far more regularly than a contracted service.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of hoping for. I was making sure that we were on board for that, and if not, we were kind of in queue to get one next if it was back ordered. With the transportation, if we need to increase the double runs, and is that going to be additional cost on our end, or is that because it's only the same driver, but we're doing double runs, more just a scheduling issue for us?
Transportation is likely going to cost us more money in any phase except remote. We still have to transport likely special education students and high need students, even if we're in remote. But when looking at the scenarios and speaking with Tewksbury Trans and Tremblay, we can anticipate, because of the lower number of students eligible to be put on a bus or a van, we will be spending more on transportation regardless of the means by which we go back to school.
Right. It's also going to cause us to have scheduling for with the double runs and things, but yeah, that's right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Demos. Thank you, Mr. Libby, for your report. And moving on to the consent agenda. Do any one of my colleagues have any questions regarding anything on tonight's consent agenda? I'll start with Mr. Cutlass.
All set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
I am all set, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mrs. Demo?
All set, thank you.
Mr. Stabman?
I'm all set. Thank you so much.
Okay. And I don't have any questions either. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept this month's consent agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent agenda. Mr. Stabman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. The consent agenda is approved. Next order of business, we have the committee reports. Very happy to hear from Superintendent Malone that we have started finally construction on the new school. So I'd like to turn the floor to Mr. Cutlass for the elementary school building committee update.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing further than what Mr. Malone said. Anyone that drives by the site can see they're well underway. And Consigli, the contractor, is working day and night there, and they're doing everything good. It's going to be underway for the next 2 years like that. So we're very happy and pleased with their work so far to date. So that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Cutlass. Gonna go to the Tewksbury Education Foundation. Mrs. Demos.
Nothing to report tonight.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Demos. The Tewksbury CPAC, we continue to meet with the leadership team. We're going to meet again with them tomorrow morning regarding getting those learners that Superintendent Malone referenced to, and hopefully for a couple weeks of summer, and most importantly, what the fall is going to look like. So we certainly appreciate the collaboration that we've received from them. And that's all I have with regards to the CPAC. And Mr. Stedman, I assume it's the same, but do you have any update regarding the wellness?
No, there's no update on wellness.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stedman. Seeing no policy changes or proposals this evening and no old business, we're going to move on to new business, and a big topic here. the 2020-2021 school reopening. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Malone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And certainly this topic has taken up most of our time and efforts here in central office for the past few months, doing a lot of thinking, doing a lot of planning, looking at guidance coming out from the state and some elements with that. We have also had 2 full meetings with the district-wide school reopening task force. And on that task force is town officials, the town manager, police chief, fire chief, board of health personnel, parents of students in the district. We also have some administrators as part of that group. And we have representatives from the unions to include the TTA, which covers teachers and aides, custodians, secretaries, and certainly 2 members here from the school committee on that task force as well, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Cutlass. So we've had some very rich discussions and looked at all of the guidance coming out of the state to include fall reopening guidance, preliminary guidance for special education, looking at questions and task force elements to support pros and cons of different approaches. We've also looked at medical information that's come out from the state, kind of scenario driven. What do you do if there's a positive case? How do you respond to it? How do you coordinate with the Board of Health? What decisions are made as far as quarantining students, staff, testing students, staff, and when it would become necessary to close a building. We've looked at all that information intently. We've also worked with the district leadership team intently to help inform that task force. There is a couple of timeline items that have come out recently from the state that are big changes in the approach to reopening for schools in the fall coming from the state. Big changes that have been changes procedurally and in guidance from the past couple months. The first being that each district will be required to submit a short description of all 3 plans for reopening of school, to include bringing all students back in a regular learning environment, a hybrid model, which may have students attending either not every day, every other day, or every other week, but minimizing the number of students in the building at one time to approximately half. And then the third phase would be a full remote, similar to what we experienced from March of last year on, however, far more enhanced as far as student experiences and instruction. So the district leadership team has done some extensive work on developing those plans. We will be vetting those through the task force on Monday, and hope to have those available for the committee to look at as well. Again, with that July 31st submittal to the state, there is only a requirement to have a minimal understanding of what those plans are. There is no commitment from the district about which plan they will be adopting on July 31st. The biggest element of change in regards to planning for the fall has been that we were informed by the state all along that although we were deeply involved in planning for the district in all of these aspects for the past couple of months, we were very specifically informed, all districts in the state were informed, that in fact the state, through the commissioner and the governor, would be determined what the final method would be for all districts to adopt in the fall. That has in fact changed since last week. And the change is that through the Commissioner Riley, through DESE, he has determined that in fact school districts will be making their own determination about which plan to undertake. This is a significant change, and it's a change, I think, for the community that puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage to make a thorough decision. Certainly, if that was going to be a decision at the district level, which would require a school committee vote, Certainly, we would have had the school committee far more involved in some of the intricate details and aspects of that. So we're going to have to ramp up that information and discussion and look at some other opportunities to engage the school committee in this, because the other element that came out last week is that as of August 10th, the district will have to supply the state with a final single plan that will be either all students returning to school as normal, a hybrid plan, or a remote plan as voted on by the school committee. So we have some significant work to do in a very short period of time. We've done a great deal of work today with the district leadership team on developing those 3 scenarios. We'll continue that work on Monday with the task force, and we hope to set up an opportunity with the school committee and the task force in the near future to share information between the school committee and all of the stakeholders, parents, teachers, other staff members, and town officials, so that as a collaborative effort, we can all come to a conclusion about what will be the best opening model for our students here in Tewksbury, and so that the school committee is in the best position prior to August 10th to make that determination for the district. So those are some major changes, not so much in the planning or the details, but in the timeline and in who's making the decision. And those have just come out within the past week.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. I'd like to open it up now to my colleagues. I'm going to start with Mrs. Demos. If you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just a little bit overwhelmed at the timeline, to be quite honest. I feel as though we're going to have to be playing a little bit of catch up to get caught up on the discussions of the task force. So I look forward to Mr. Malone getting us caught up either through minutes or how we're going to do that, so we can make an educated decision that meets the needs of all of our students in Tewksbury. I'm wondering, do the members meet? Is there a set schedule that you're meeting on this? I'm assuming it's virtually. Is it like a set schedule that you've already put into place? Or now that you have this new information, you probably need to step it up a little bit more quickly? Or
for the task force, it is Mondays at 1 p.m. For the district leadership team, it has been predominantly daily, and has been for a while.
Yeah, no, I believe me, I understand that. That's why I understand how much there is to get caught up on. So however you can do that, whether you tap into us, if we jump into the Zooms now or Google Meets, or however you can best give us the information, the more information that we can have to guide our decision would be appreciated.
Thank you, Mrs. Demos. Mr. Cutlass?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank Mr. Malone and Mrs. Regan and the whole district leadership team. I know they've been working day and night on this and expending a tremendous amount of time and energy over the last few months. And I greatly appreciate all their extremely hard work that they have, given that the state probably changes their ideas on a weekly basis. So I just want to thank them for all their hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Cutlass. Mr. Statman?
I concur with Mr. Cutlass about all the hard work that everyone's put in. Excuse me. I look forward to, obviously looking at all the work and seeing exactly what needs to be done, and obviously for the safety of the kids coming back to the next school year.
Thank you, Mr. Statman. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I'll just, having sat on the committee for the first couple meetings, there's been a lot of good discussion, but, unfortunately, the state has put us in sort of a position to move very quickly. So, I know we'll get it done, and we'll put together, we have 3 plans. They all will work. but they're all going to have to be modified as we go, unfortunately, because we're going to just continue to learn as we go, and we're going to continue to be faced with challenges as we move forward. So I am, I'm excited about the opportunity, and I know we have a lot of work that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks.
Great, thank you, Mr. Wilson. And I would just like to add that we have 5 very capable school committee people, and please, we encourage the public's input. I think part of the reason we did the task force was we were able to get people looking at this reopening from different angles. We've got, as the superintendent said, we have people from teachers to residents to professionals. And obviously, this has come as somewhat of a surprise to us that the burden's been placed on us. But that's okay. And that's not to say that we don't want or hear your input, because we certainly do. I know I do. I'm sure we're going to see something similar to what we saw, and I'm gonna steal the governor's line. It's not going to be enough for some. It's going to be too much for some. But I think we're all dedicated and focused on doing the best we can to get, all of our students back. What that looks like, obviously, is going to take place over the next few weeks. A lot of people don't understand, and I don't use it as a crutch, and I'm appreciative to the union that we have, that we're able to sit down and have conversations. But we also need to understand and be cognizant of the fact that they're a big player in this. They're a big piece. As much as we want to get, and I've heard from a lot of parents, our students back, we need to make sure that we have a plan that's safe for students and all the staff. So that's an often overlooked piece that people really don't understand. And like I said, I think we're in a good place. I think we're working collaboratively with the union, and obviously, as I said, that's going to be part of it. So we certainly, welcome the public's input. It never hurts to send an email or to anyone on the school committee or to Superintendent Malone or Assistant Superintendent Regan with that in mind. So with that being said, Mr. Malone, I'd like to move it to the non-union personnel salary adjustment for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to hand that off to Mr. Libby.
Thank you, Superintendent and Mr. Chair. So we're asking for the committee's approval to make an adjustment to our non-union staff members' salaries here in the district. This group includes many staff members who work directly with students in classrooms or other settings, many of our district administrators, and many of our employees in other support positions. We're asking for the 2.25% increase that's in line with what was negotiated with our collective bargaining units for the FY21 year. It's also in line with our budgeted amounts for this group of employees. If there are any questions, be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Libby. I'll start with Mr. Stadman. Do you have any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Mrs. Demos?
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Cutlass?
No questions, Mr. Chair, but I just want to thank Mr. Libby for all his hard work as well. I know he's been working extremely hard over the past few months with this COVID too.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Wilson?
Nothing at this time.
Great. All right, what's the pleasure of the board at this time?
I'll make a motion to approve the salary adjustment for non-union personnel of 2.25% for the 33 non-union employees of the Tewksbury Public Schools as they are listed in the school committee packet.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve a 2.25 salary adjustment for the 33 non-union employees of the Tewksbury Public Schools. Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Unanimous vote. Those salary increases are approved. Moving on to the 2021 school committee meeting calendar. I'd just like to open that up to my colleagues first to make sure if they saw anything on there glaring that they absolutely can't make that we need to discuss or maybe make a revision to or change. And I'll start with Mr. Cutlass.
I'm all set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Wilson?
The only thing I wanted to ask about was we had talked at the about doing a workshop and also us having another meeting. Should we be adding that now just so that we can get it on our calendars and be ready for that?
Well, this is the 21, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. I'm just thinking calendar in general, but I'll save that for later. I'm good with 2021.
Okay, we'll take that up in the future school committee meeting dates to make sure we have that date prior to August 10th.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mrs. Demos?
I'm good.
Mr. Stadman?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Malone, is there any glaring issues that you see here regarding?
No, not on the 2021 school committee meeting calendar. No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Mrs. Regan, do you have any concerns with the calendar?
I do not. I just wanted to remind you that it is informational only. We certainly would like your blessing tonight so we can post these dates to the website. It does help in our school planning, and we're always flexible enough if we realize that one of the dates conflicts with something like, AP testing or whatever, and we'll certainly adjust if we need to.
Great. Would someone like to make that motion this evening?
I'll make a motion to approve the school calendar for the 2020-2021 school year.
I'll second that.
I got a motion and a second to approve the school committee meeting schedule for 2021. Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman?
Aye.
Mr. Demos?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. The school committee meeting schedule is set for 2021. The next order of business is a couple, I think, house cleaning stuff, committee appointments. Just to make sure the public is aware, the Tewksbury North and Trahan School Reuse Committee has the seat specifically from someone from the school committee, and the same is the case for the Tewksbury School Athletic Fields Committee. I know I've been doing the work on the North and the Trahan, and Mr. Stadman was currently the appointee on the athletic school fields. So I'd like to open it up to my colleagues to see if they have any questions. To me, it kind of seems, with all that's going on, no reason to change it, but certainly would want to have the conversation. So I'll start with Mr. Wilson.
I see no reason for a change.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. The Cutlass?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Wilson. I don't see any reason for a change as well.
Thank you. Mrs. Demos?
I'm good with keeping them the same.
Great. And Mr. Stadman, sorry you had to go last as you were part of this. So.
Oh, I'm glad to stay on the committee.
Okay. I agree with everyone, and as such, I'd like to make a motion to appoint John Stadman, I guess reappoint him back to the Tewksbury School Athletic Fields Committee.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to reappoint John Stadman back to the Tewksbury School Athletic Fields Committee. I vote aye. Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Thank you. Mrs. Demos?
Aye.
Congratulations, Mr. Stadman. And
Thank you, everybody.
forward to your continued good work. And what's the pleasure of the board with regards to the North Street and Trahan School Reuse Committee?
I'll make a motion that
Mike.
Mr. Sullivan is our member on that committee.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to reappoint Keith Sullivan to the Tewksbury North and Trahan School Reuse Committee. Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Vote aye.
Mrs. Demos?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass?
Aye.
And Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Great. I will continue that work on the Tewksbury North and Trahan Reuse Committee. Moving on the agenda, we have a school committee resolution regarding COVID-19 and state funding. This came to us as a resolution, and I'll briefly read it here. I'm not sure if the people at home, whereas if the schools are to reopen this fall in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is the responsibility of each school district to do so safely and responsibly. And whereas it is the responsibility of the state to ensure that each school district is able to pay for the enormous additional staffing, transportation, and material expenses required to do this. And whereas the state cannot expect mandatory COVID-19 safety guidelines to be followed without also ensuring that each school district has the funds required to implement these guidelines. Therefore, let it be resolved that the state must guarantee every school district full reimbursement for whatever COVID-19 expenses are required to follow state mandates. We must ensure a statewide school reopening that is safe, responsible, and equitable. Signed, the members of the Tewksbury School Committee, and this will go to our Governor, Charlie Baker, the Education Secretary, the Education Commissioner, the Senate President, the House Speaker, Joint Education Committee co-chairs, and we will be CCing our state delegation, Mr. Barry Feingold, our State Senator, Tram Noonian, and Dave Robinson, and we will also be sending it to Richard Montori if it is passed and approved, and we will be one of over 100 districts that has taken this action in the hopes to put some political pressure on the state with regards to mandates that are coming down, so we can make sure that we get our students and staff back into the school safely. So with that being said, I'd like to open it up to my colleagues for any comments or concerns. I'll start with Mr. Wilson.
I have no comments or concerns, and I fully support us taking this action and having the state be a good partner with us.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Cutler? I think you're on mute, Mr. Cutlass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I support the resolution. I have no further comments or questions.
Great. Mrs. Demos?
No comments or questions.
Thank you. And Mr. Stadman?
No, I support the resolution as well. No questions, comments, concerns.
Great. So what is the pleasure of the board at this time?
I'd like to make a motion that we support this resolution and send it along to our delegation.
I have a motion and a second to approve the school committee resolution regarding COVID-19 and state funding. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutler?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote on the resolution?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you, sir. The chair votes aye as well. And within the next day or two, I'll make sure I get that over to the powers to be. And as I said earlier with the public, It doesn't help to just call us to give your input. It certainly helps to call our state delegation with concerns, obviously, regarding money, if additional money is going to be needed, which what it looks like to be able to safely reopen our schools. So any help we could get from anyone to call their state delegation would certainly be very appreciated. And I think finally, under new business, Mr. Malone, we have the MASC delegate form. I guess my only question, not to get ahead here, is this, I know we require a vote on this. Is this time sensitive? Obviously, not knowing what it's going to look like. I think this conference is usually, I think, the end of September, right? Or October, maybe even.
If I may say, it's due, I think, by October.
Okay.
The conference is typically in November.
Okay, thank you. And I assume are you looking for that this evening?
I mean, you could, or you could put it off until September.
Okay. Well, I know we're going to meet in August.
Mr. Chairman, you're on mute.
Thank you, John. Well, I know obviously we're meeting in August as well, so I'm not sure. Superintendent, are you sure they're going to have this conference?
They are not going. I was out and then I just got back on, so I don't know what happened there. But are you asking about the MASC, the joint conference?
Yes.
In November?
Correct.
That has been canceled. In person has been canceled. Okay. I'm not sure if they're going to try to do any type of remote meeting in its place, but they have not determined that as of yet.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I'd heard some rumblings, and that's why I didn't. So we don't need to take any action on this item.
I'm not sure if the committee wouldn't want to designate someone in the fact that may, like many of these things during this pandemic, come up on short notice, and they're looking for some type of meeting or some element. I don't think it would hurt to identify a delegate to that, and if the meeting or remote or in person otherwise doesn't occur, then it doesn't occur. But I'm not sure the way some of these are going. I'm worried that some of these things will come up on short notice.
Okay. I'll open it up to my colleagues. I believe, Mrs. Demos, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you were a representative last year. Is that correct?
I was, so I would defer to my colleagues for this year.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Stadman, do you have any interest?
I'm actually going to be starting a new job shortly, so I'm not sure exactly what kind of free time I have. So I might have to pass on that one.
Okay. Fair enough. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Okay. And Mr. Cutlass?
I'm all set, Mr. Chair. That's all right. I'll be an alternate if you need someone.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to have Mr. Scott Wilson act as our voting delegate at the annual business meeting in November.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve Mr. Wilson to be Tewksbury's voting delegate at the annual MASC and Superintendent's Joint Annual Business Meeting in November. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. That's a unanimous vote. Congratulations and thank you, Mr. Wilson, for being our representative. So moving on to school committee matters of interest. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Cutlass.
All set, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Wilson?
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mrs. Demos?
No, I've shared all my comments earlier.
Great. And Mr. Stadman?
I'm fresh out of comments.
Great. The only thing I have, I got my Red Sox shirt on, so go Red Sox. I know we open up Friday night. Not going to be any fans there, but it's going to be nice to be able to watch some baseball again. So don't be afraid to turn your tube on and support the Red Sox Friday night. School committee meetings, future subcommittee meetings, as Mr. Wilson brought up, we're obviously going to have to schedule a meeting prior to August 10th. So maybe I'll defer to Mr. Malone for a second here to give us some information on what he thinks will be a good date where we can hook up and get some information that, Mrs. Demos and others, myself included, we're looking for from the task force, and maybe have a day or two to digest it, and then we can have our meeting and vote on the plan. So I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent Malone right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, most of this information is so new on this process. So again, we regularly meet with the task force at Mondays at 1 p.m. My sense would be, and again, completely up to the committee about what works for them best as far as obtaining as much information as possible prior to decision making. But my sense would be if we could set a time for a joint workshop between the school committee, the reopening task force, and the district leadership team, really the three components that have been specifically involved in this planning all along, to sit down in a workshop format with the school committee so that the school committee can kind of ask questions, get ideas, look a little bit more deep so that they're in the best position possible to make a decision, and then set a date. It could be the same date, but likely I don't know if the committee would like a little bit of time to digest some of that information, but time will be short. My suggestion is that that the committee not meet any later than August 6th to vote and make their final determination, which is Thursday, August 6th. We have to submit to DESC by Monday, August 10th. And we could either do a workshop during the day on Wednesday, August 5th, or piggyback on the task force meeting on Monday, August 3rd at 1 p.m. That is established by the task force. I don't know the task force ability to do another meeting on the 5th, but my sense is the task force would probably need that meeting on the 3rd just to finalize some of their issues to better inform the committee. So my suggestion would be to run a workshop on Wednesday, August 5th during the day, and set a time for a school committee meeting, likely a short one, with the sole purpose of determining a vote for the reopening on Thursday, August 6th at a time convenient to the committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Malone. I'm going to start with Mr. Cutlass. Do you have any comments or concerns?
No, I'm fine with that schedule for the 5th and the 6th. I'll be out of state on the 6th, but I can just call in, I'm sure.
Okay, Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I too, the 5th and the 6th work. So whatever we have to do this, we need to get it done. So I think giving the group a chance to meet that Monday and finalize things, and then a workshop with school committee, and then a meeting for us to make that final decision, I think is a good approach.
Okay. Mrs. Demos?
Wednesday, August 5th, I can make work anytime up until 4:30. but after 4:30, I have a previously scheduled event, and then Thursday I have all day, so I could make, like I said, any time during the day up till 4:30 on the 5th, and any time on the 6th.
Superintendent, can we accommodate that on the 5th?
And I'm thinking to try to accommodate the task force on the 5th. Might be better to start at 1 o'clock, which is the time they're used to starting.
Okay.
And it would also accommodate the district leadership team. But certainly the primary focus here is the school committee, so we want to make sure you're able to do that.
Yeah, so if you don't envision this going from 1 to like after 4:30.
I don't envision that, but I don't know what depth we would anticipate that conversation going with the school committee.
Well, you know what though, I really need all this information, so I'll see what I can do on my end to make that work. So let's plan at 1 o'clock on August 5th, and then meet again on the 6th for the school committee vote.
Okay. And Chris, Mr. Stadman, do you have any questions?
No, I'll make it happen.
Okay, great, thank you. And obviously, those will both be public meetings.
Yeah, yes, I think the workshops typically are open to the public. They're typically not open to public comment, but I think it would be a great way to have a transparent, meeting that involves all the stakeholders, so community members that want to tune in and take part can see what that process looks like.
Great.
What would the committee like to do for a meeting time on August 6th?
Okay, I thought everyone was pretty clean. Mr. Cutlass, do you have a time you prefer, Sue?
I don't. I have a one meeting from 2 to 3 that day. Other than that, I'm completely open.
So let's try to make it after your 3 o'clock meet when you're done at 3. So
Okay.
It's later in the afternoon, so it doesn't.
And I think the purpose of that meeting would be for the school committee to certainly take a vote on a preferred reopening plan. I don't know what level of community involvement we can anticipate at that meeting, or what level of discussion the school committee wants to engage in before taking the final vote.
Okay.
But certainly from 3 o'clock on, I am fine. I don't, where everyone else is completely up to you.
Okay. Well, it seems like that will work, Mr. Cutlass. Will that work for you?
You're on mute, Mr. Cutlass.
That's fine, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's good.
Right.
Thank you, John.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Great. And Mr. Stadman?
That's fine.
Excellent. So we'll do August 5th for a workshop at 1 p.m. And August 6th, I'm sorry, what was that time again?
3 p.m.
3 p.m.
Mr. Chairman.
for the school committee vote. Okay?
Yes.
Everyone got that? Great.
Got it.
And before we go, we do have a caller. I'm going to go to Brian. Someone has called in, so Brian?
The caller's right here, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you.
You're on. Do you mind just muting your TV?
I'm going to mute it. Okay.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
How are you?
Hi, I have a question.
Sure.
Who am I speaking with?
This is Keith Sullivan, the chairman of the Tewksbury School Committee.
How are
Would you mind?
Sorry.
I'm doing well, thank you. Could I just get your name and your address for the record, please?
So thanks for taking my call. I just, with a group message, and they actually were chiming in a few questions, and a lot of them were, one popular question came up. With the survey that was issued about, a couple weeks ago or a week ago, give or take, is that being considered into the decisions made for this district?
I'll give you a brief answer and then I can turn you over to the superintendent. Obviously, what we're trying to do is solicit input from the residents. We've also formed a townwide task force that has people from all phases of the town that are looking at what reopening looks like. We've just had some recent changes and guidance from the state. Originally, a lot of this stuff was going to be guided by the state, but just last week, the state reversed their position and said that districts are going to make that decision individually. So, Tewksbury might do one thing, Andover can do another, Wilmington can do what they want. And so what we're doing is obviously trying to get as much information from as many stakeholders as we can. I certainly can, like I said, I'll turn the floor over to our superintendent, and he'll give you more in depth into that. But Superintendent, are you there?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just for identification purposes, ma'am, could we have your name and address?
Yes, my name is Grace D. Ippolito, 11 Allison Way, Tewksbury, Mass.
Thank you. And to answer your question around the survey, actually the surveying of parents and teachers is probably the primary source of information that we are considering for developing any plans. And you'll see a letter coming out from my office describing some of those pieces as early as tomorrow. The initial surveying that went out a couple weeks ago was based on information at the time. We intend to resurvey parents with some more specifics about what in-person, hybrid, and remote learning would look like, and see if we can dive a little bit deeper into parents' feelings towards reopening and see if that will guide us. We've done a lot of work to specify and dig out what some of these different models will look like. And we'll have to balance out where we're at with parents in the community, where we're at with staff members here at work, where we see the task force work, where we see the district leadership team, and certainly how that culminates in a final decision in collaboration with the school committee. But certainly the survey information is likely our primary driver and is something that has really allowed us to look deeper into these models so that we are able to give parents more specific information in the next round of surveys. When we ask about these different models, they'll have a little bit better of a frame of reference to answer on rather than a simple preference of one over the other.
Yes, okay, agreed. And when will that second survey come out?
We're working on that right now. We hope to have that out to parents at the latest by early next week.
Okay, that's great. So we look forward to getting that. I myself, being in the health field, definitely have some good input. And I know lots of changes day by day or week by week. So it's something that, it's in everything, the government has put it on the district now to make this decision. So, but okay, thank you so much.
Certainly, if you have ideas, don't wait for the survey. Feel free to email them to me directly.
Oh, okay, I will.
Great.
I'll do that. Thank you, Mr. Malone, for your time, and I'll relate that over to the ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thanks for calling in. Okay. Brian, do we have anyone else?
We have no callers yet, Mr. Chairman, but there is probably about a minute delay on the YouTube stream.
Okay.
Wanted to give it about a minute.
Okay. Well, just going to say that we are at the future agenda items. So I would like to ask my colleagues if they have anything that they think they might need or want to be added as future agenda items.
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Cutlass?
No, none at this time, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Demos?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Stadman?
No, Mr. Chair, not at this time.
Great, thank you. And for the viewing public out there, as always, if you do have something, you can email myself or any one of my colleagues on the school committee or Superintendent Malone for that matter. So that being said, we are at our adjournment. Brian, still no one there?
Still no callers, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. What is the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn tonight's meeting. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass?
Aye.
And Mrs. Demos?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a good evening.